here to discuss and share with you a personal story about how I am breaking the cycle of racism in my family. It is a snapshot of my journey. It is not over. And I really want you to understand that it's a continuous journey. This is my father. To this day, he would deny that he's a racist. But I have seen him judge people by the color of their skin, whether he's yelling at the TV or talking to somebody in public. And he expected us to be this way. It was an argument with him if we didn't agree with him. His dad's name was Lee, after General Lee. This is really embedded in my family. I was raised in Missouri, all up and down the Midwest, but primarily Springfield, Missouri. It's a beautiful place. It's the Ozarks. It's so romantic. It has so many beautiful seasons, so many great things, but this is also the norm. It was not a surprise to see people in the KKK outfits greeting people back to school and giving out flyers. There was no protest against it. That's the norm where I grew up. And so there's a lot of parallels in my story, a lot of parallel timelines. I was an angsty teenager, like you should be. So a lot of angsty teenagers. I had a child at the end of high school, was raising this child, thought I was doing awesome, doing better than my parents, like every parent wants to do. I'm doing it better than they did. His little version of me, everything's going really good. And then one day, this came home. Came home with his report card, and I just got a reality check. They're a great mirror of who you are. No matter what you think you are, they're a better mirror, especially the younger they are. I needed guidance. So I do what any good Catholic would do. I went to the church. I said, Father David, I need some help. I need some guidance. I want to do this right. I got to break this cycle. And he had a very Paulo Coelho moment with me, those of you who read The Alchemist. And he said, go on a journey. Leave the church. Leave everything. Anything that's holding you back, leave it. And so, I gathered from this, we had this long conversation. It ended up being like, write your own story. This is your job to write it. Nobody's going to write it for you. So I adopted this motto early on in my life. Comes from the Navy SEALs. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. And kind of started mustering up all my courage, like the last speaker was talking about. I gathered my courage and said, okay, I'm going to do everything I have to do to be a better person, not be a racist. Progress needs commitment. I want to explain to you guys, we talk about the creative choices and these creative things. Some of the most creative approaches to some of the things you're going to run into are some of the hardest decisions you're going to have to make. Notice my father. There's a machoism about him, and he never smiles in a photograph, even if I ask him to. Notice my brother next to me, and then my uncle, his brother. They don't smile. I realize that my whole family has a macho attitude about it. There's also racism that runs through my family, and none of them would admit they were racist. Remember that. So I said, you know what? None of this isn't working. I'm out. I took a hiatus from my family, and then it turned into my friends, or lack thereof, at that time, and then jobs and education, what have you. If it was not supporting me being a better person, I distanced myself from that. And not in an aggressive way, just in a very positive, loving, peaceful, I'm going to go do this now. To this day, years, decades later, I still haven't reconnected with some of my family members. So, this is my family today. See a big difference? Okay, gotta keep going. So, education. A lot of parallel timelines here. Education is amazing. It's expensive. And I have 4 degrees in graphic design, but under that, I fell in love with typography. All of these things are gonna make sense here in a few minutes. Typography is the art of working with type. This is a typeface I just created, released it a few weeks ago at a gallery opening here in town. Typography is magical. Thank you. Here I'm at the Colorado Crust Street Art Festival. It is something that it's everywhere, good and bad. Like, I think it's really funny here on the you're right. University prep is some of the worst type I've ever seen, and it just makes me smile every time I see it. It just makes me, all my graphic design students, there's a job for them somewhere because so much of it is bad. Exclamation marks that show up in scabs. Only typographers love this stuff the way that I do. But I want to point out something at this point, though, is that there's a creative muscle that we all have up here. And for me to deal with racism, I have to always be finding a way, and I do it through typography, and you need to find your thing, that you gotta always be exercising it. Because when you're faced with the hard decisions, you get to use that same muscle to be, how am I gonna deal with this? So one thing I found out for me personally, as I was going through the education, the more educated I became, and not just traditionally, but just in life, the less I had stereotypes and the less the people around me had stereotypes because I was changing my demographic that I was hanging around. And then all of a sudden it showed up differently in my children. So I really saw this taking place. So another timeline, went to Mexico for a design conference, married a designer from Mexico. She was awesome. Then I learned a little Spanish, and then she learned some English after we were married, and we realized we didn't get along too well. But we did make an absolutely wonderful daughter. My family had a hard time with this as well. So after that, I moved to Colorado, greatest place in the world. Went to Fort Collins, and for the first time in my life, I found that there's communities out there that are progressive and trying to heal and not be combative and trying to make things a better place. That was a wonderful experience. I fell in love with the mindset of it, and I never wanted to leave Colorado. So that's when it got really, really exciting. I was like, all right, this is where it's all gonna happen. Then I met this lady, the most wonderful person in my life, my wife, she's in the front row here. Then I voted for this guy, okay? I took that picture in Springfield, Missouri. It was a small crowd. But moved to Grand Junction, okay, first time at the monument, and then this happened. We had to go rent a house. And the first landlord that we went to, he said two things to us. He's like, we love you guys as a couple, but we wish you were married. But you have to promise me you won't vote for that Obama. That's what I thought at that moment. But I knew I was in it for the long game. So I told him, you don't have to worry about that, knowing that my vote would offset his. So back to tools. What's in your lens? I highly suggest, and you've heard a lot about this today, you've got to go reinvestigate what your lens is, okay? And you can do this through simple, fun, lighthearted, creative approaches, but then you apply them to the more difficult ones. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to look at yourself. Here's an example. I took this photograph. I didn't really know the meaning of it, but the tank's in the background with one of my most precious relationships on this planet. I knew something was heavy here, and I wasn't sure, And then I realized a year later, I had bought her camouflage sunglasses because I want you guys and everybody else to perceive my daughter as a badass girl, stronger than all the men. But you got to make it fun, okay? So I'm gonna give you a few things that my wife and I do here. Type City, it's a game that we play, and I suggest all of you, individually or as a couple or as groups, when you go to unfamiliar places, come up with something to make it more interesting and more memorable. My wife go around any city we go to together, and we find typefaces. The first time we did uppercase. The next city we go to uppercase and lowercase. Time after that we go uppercase and lowercase. We look at each other and we're like, all the punctuation. So we go around looking for this stuff, taking photos. So here's Chicago. It's the first one that we did. But here, the typeface isn't the thing. It's the fact that we're two people looking at an ampersand out of a straw or something on the ground, and everyone's walking past like, what are they looking at? They're crazy. They must be drunk or something. And we're like, get the right photo of that ampersand. That's so cool. Here's another thing. You can always find a Pac-Man at every city. You got to go find it. So here's a tool. Creative to function scale. I use it for everything from which toothpaste to buy to just anything heavy, dealing with racism, okay, breaking that cycle. Because most decisions we make fall in the middle. Sometimes you get really creative, sometimes you get really functional, but you can't have them both together. They're always a blend somewhere in the middle where you lose one or the other. My most recent son, Vander, he's named after my letterpress. We just dropped the word cook off. Vander Cook, got a name. Totally came off that scale, way on the creative side. Every time I look at him, I'm happy, and I'm a typographer, so I get a lot out of it. At our house, we have a plus sign on one of our garage doors. It represents positivity. It means that when we come home from work, we leave the baggage at the door. Or if nothing else, we communicate to each other, hey, you have got to realize where you are and not just walk in and bring that same stuff. If you have a hard day at work, you can let it go. That's supposed to be the best place in our life, is our home. It's also a great backdrop. So this was in response to the Scott Walker shooting. I'm not making a political statement. I'm saying it's frustrating for me. I don't know what to do. I needed to create. I use that scale, creative or functional. This is on the creative side. It was never meant to do anything. This was my therapy. It showed the confusion and the frustration, how intertwined the interracial shootings are, right? But it's still something I just didn't know how to deal with it. So I did a type piece. Here's another type piece I made. I throw axes for meditation. It's wonderful. You should all do it. Just build an axe wall in your backyard, throw axes. My neighbors think I'm crazy, but it's great. But I use type again, like the middle one there says, "You're not me," and that's annoying. I'm learning to let people know through my healing what's going on through typography. Here's my wife and I being creative using that same creative functional scale. Like I said, doesn't always have to be heavy, but we go and clean manhole covers off in South Carolina and make posters to bring home. And then all the locals are looking at us like, what are they doing? You know, we had one lady trying to call the cops on us, and we're like, it's cool, it's cool. You meet friends. So here's my recommendation to you guys. All this stuff's around you, and you got to take a second look, okay? You walk past things all the time, and my wife and I it's always amazing to me how many people walk past something amazing, and everybody's just doing what they're normal. Most people have faces on their phone now, right? Look up, look around you. It's a great place. But what it does is it exercises that creative muscle. This one, for example, I think I want to vote for funding education because we need to get kids to spell better, okay? Look at signs. These are caution signs. They're everywhere. They're amazing, okay? The entertainment is all around you, okay? Walking down the street with a friend. I say, oh my God, you gotta stop. Look at this. Boom. I chased this guy around Grand Junction for 10 minutes. I know he was getting really freaked out by this because I turned left and right, but you can't get that snowdrift anywhere in that. But this stuff's all around you guys. So here's the thing. I still can't get him to smile. He still won't admit that he's racist, but look at my family. Have the courage, do it. Thank you.